trying to say to him, we're here to enjoy ourselves, but if you work hard, you listen, and we leave everything on the pitch, you know what you can achieve at the end. But you're always mindful that you're doing it for the players.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with Coach Luca. On this episode, I spoke to Coach Leigh Jeffrey around everything to do with coaching, connecting with players, understanding environments, landscapes, frameworks, how to connect with players, changing the environment, how to adapt new situations which we have both found ourselves in. There was a structure behind it and there was a lot to talk about, especially Leigh's previous experiences, but we just didn't get down to it because we just delved into a great conversation around coaching. We both really enjoyed it and the hour passed really quickly, and Leigh is going to reappear again at another point. I really enjoyed speaking to Leigh and took so much away, and whilst I was there I was making so many notes as we were having continuous conversations. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I have. I know I took so much away in this conversation, and as a coach and anyone else who's listening involved in football, this is a great episode for you to really listen to. You can find all these episodes on Spotify and YouTube, as well as LinkedIn and Twitter. You can also find them on Podcast Addict and Anchor. So if you'd like to listen, just give it a follow, a subscribe, and drop a like. I really appreciate your time, and Leigh was a great interviewee. There is so much to learn, and I look forward to having her on again. So once you listen to this episode, keep an eye out for another one with Leigh. There was so much to talk about, and it was a fantastic insight into what she does every day. Listen to how we compared our experiences, something about our insights and our experiences. But for now, this is Coach Luca, the Reflective Coach podcast, sponsored by Humble Gifts. Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.
I'm a bit disappointed with that United top in the background as we started that. I thought I'd have bigger expectations, but you started off with that top.
It's just the office now. I can't say I'm like a fully United fan. I'm more of a it's more of a family thing than I'm more of a City fan more than anything. But
oh really?
So yeah.
How does that sit down in the family then?
It started off more just like the women's team, and then because at the time United didn't have the women's team set up, so I went down the City route, and then I just never moved. I just stuck with them. So it's kind of come when you're trying to explain to someone, oh yeah, well all my family support United, but I support City women's, and they're like, you only support the women's. I'm like, well, I'm not a massive men's football lover, and I've gone more down the women's route now. So I just said the ease of it now is just I'm just a City fan.
Which is nothing wrong with that, and it says it in itself there, doesn't it? A lot of people question why you wouldn't support a City, a male's team, but essentially, if you are a female and you support a female team, and that's natural, there's nothing wrong with supporting a female team. Just in this entirety, you don't have to support the male team.
I'm a City fan.
And, it's great that you are. And, what's been quite interesting is the BBC iPlayer. There's a new documentary, Dorking, Squad Goals Till I Die. And that's been quite interesting and given a good insight on female football. And I think they had a meeting where they went to one of the male games and saying how intense it was and how different, even just for them to sit and watch a training session with the men, was how different the way it was with the females, for example.
Yeah, and I think I watched the Chelsea Women documentary. There's a 6-part series on that. And the insight of that, I don't think people realise at times how much goes on and what happens behind closed doors. And that was really interesting to see, like, what was going on and like how intense it actually is and the insight that goes in there. And you take a lot, and I think some of the games showed them playing City, and I thought, I would have never picked up Emma Hayes' act how she does on a sideline. But once you watch it and how she speaks to them on that documentary, you then pick it up again.
Yeah, that's one of the documentaries that I want to watch, especially Emma Hayes. I'm a Chelsea fan, so it's great that we got such a successful women's side as well to complement what we're doing holistically as a club, because our youth, our men's and our female are all doing well, which is great. But when you sort of say about Emma Hayes and the way she coaches and things that you've taken away, when I was watching the documentary on the BBC iPlayer, One of the girls was saying she wasn't quite enjoying how intense her coach was, and her coach was a female as well. And that football was, they were a grassroots level, and they're trying to progress obviously to the WSL. And she was saying how she didn't enjoy the intense environment and wanted to get back to basics and have fun. But it's that hard balance between progressing a club in that situation as well as then going, do you know what, a lot of those players in that squad are there to have that fun element, and it can be quite hard to change the contrast of what those from above want to do to the players like themselves who are currently playing in that team, for example.
And I think it gets to the point where our players have got to decide, is that environment right for them, and if it's not, well, they need to find a different route, and they've got to find what's best suited for them. And if the way the club's going isn't the way the players are going, then actually somewhere else is probably better suited. But I think that's just the way the women's game's going now, where it isn't, yes, you've still got your recreational side of things, and that's great, but also they're taking it a little bit more serious now and actually working hard to get where they want to be. And unfortunately, that takes a transition period, and if you are lost in that transition and you no longer suit the philosophy of the club, then unfortunately an exit route is for you, and you've got to look elsewhere.
And they're all good points within itself, like in the men's game where it's already quite established, as we know. Obviously, there's semi-pro and pro levels, and you can get paid to even play at a decent amateur level as well. But for those girls where they're playing grassroots, as you would in men's, it can be difficult then, as you say, to make that judgment when it's not for them and to go in a different route. But it's great for the game in itself, because the more those clubs and the more owners and the more money that's injected means that there will be more amateur clubs that could pay, then semi-pro and then pro, which is exactly what the females need, because it's not enough paid opportunities for girls and professional females even to a high level in that context as well.
No, 100%.
And the more that it grows, it's even better for everyone all around, because as yourself, you've seen it as a coach, which is great for you. And trying to signpost skills and signpost young people into clubs is a great thing to do. But sometimes when the opportunities aren't there to signpost, it can be quite difficult. But hence why all your great work is kicked in and everything that you've done on the community programs that you've done.
And I think that's where you look at now. Like, I've queued 2.5 hours this morning to get tickets for the game at Wembley in April. Had we seen that 3 years ago? Not at all. I think that just shows the growth that we've had over summer. I've seen it at a grassroots level, in a level in school, where now I'd hosted a European School Sports Day, and I guarantee there was as many girls in a football kit as there were boys. And I think that just shows representation they've had in school. I was quite heavy on the football side of it. I lived and breathed it. I was that female role model that they've latched onto. We've had a lot of footballing opportunities. They're now out there playing in clubs, and they've started their journey. So that kind of takes you back to actually being that role model and seeing the growth that they've got.
And it's great that you are seen as that role model and to, give those opportunities, because, it's that representation, as you say, which is a really important factor, because, there's not enough representation of a lot of demographics as such, whether it's females, whether it's BAME, and whether it's, other ethnicities as such. But, that representation for a young female, especially at the young age of 4, to go through and to be wearing a football kit and not to be laughed at, where it might have been when we were younger, is a great way that the game is going, and it's become truly acceptable now, which is exactly what it should have been. But it's great that it's starting to come in play a lot more often.
Yeah, and I remember growing up as a player, you'd walk around town in a football kit, and you would get the looks at you like, why are you in a football kit? Why are you so heavy involved in football? Like, why football? And I'd come from a very heavy gymnastics background and athletics, and it took in the edge in the end that football was the route for me. And I think it's the norm now, and it's how it should be, and it shows the growth of the game is where you want it to be, and it'll only continue growing with the success of the Euros.
Exactly, and as it continues to grow and there's more scope to be wearing football kits and things like that, even though you might get a girl whose dad might buy him a typical United kit as the one in the background, for example, on the back there might be a Ronaldo name, but in this sense, when it becomes a girl supporting a club like yourself, the more female names which are going to become more recognised, it also brings a great importance to it as well.
Yeah, it's that transition period. I know now on the back of my City shirts, on a few I've got the female names on the back, because that's just that's the route I go down. That's the players I support. So when people have bought it as gifts, that's the route they've gone down because that's who I support. And it's that transition period, and I think the growth on the Euros is only going to get the players out there more, and the more publicity they've got and the awards they're winning and the game being out there, the growth is just going to be massive, and it's just progressing that.
Absolutely, and it's that growth which is really important, as we've seen and will continue to see. But it's in that sense, as you say, it's those opportunities which continue to arise and go from there. But as you say, you've played yourself as a player when you were younger, and obviously you do a lot of coaching now, which is hence why I got in touch with you. But in that sense, then, when you reflect on it, being a coach and player, do you prefer coaching to playing?
It's a weird one. It's only really this season I've really transitioned more into the coaching side of the game than playing. I've always loved playing. At one point, I played, I refereed, I coached, and there's only so many time slots you can fit in on a weekend. Um, so in the end, I just went with the coaching and the playing, and I always wanted to give myself an opportunity to play because I gave so many opportunities to others, and I felt like I'd feel like I was missing out a little bit if I was giving all to someone to play, and then I missed out on that enjoyment. I only actually started playing at 16, so I came into the game quite late. Um, so I played at junior level for a year and then went straight into adults football. Um, I'm still around playing. I did decide early this season, so when I took on the coaching role at Chorley Women, that I couldn't play at 2 o'clock and be on the side of a pitch managing and coaching at 2 o'clock. So I had to make that decision to step away from playing. But I could definitely say in the last 18 months, I have preferred coaching over playing. I think that took up more time. I took more responsibility from teams. I did my UEFA B. So realistically, that last 18 months, 12 months, I had a focus and a lot of my time coaching courses were at a weekend. I was then having to put a lot of time into my visits were coming through. So I had to step away from playing to make sure I gave my all into that. So naturally this year it came into a nice transition. I've heavily coached in junior football for the last 8 years. So this year is the first year I've taken a step into adult football. So it's been a nice transition. I'm still itching to get out playing. So to the point I have signed myself on as like a player coach now, just in case I'm needed. But for me now, I think if my career and my future is coaching, I live and breathe football, work in football. But I think in terms of playing, it would only be on like a recreational offer now, and when I can turn up and play, and when it can fit in with me, because at a weekend it's just taken up on the sideline.
No, I get that entirely. And I'm 26 now, and I stopped playing when I was about 16, 17, really. So I stopped about 8 or 9 years ago. But a lot of parents would say to me, "Oh, do you still play?" And I say, "Well, I haven't played for a long time. I'll play the odd five-a-side, etc."
Mm.
But when I'm playing now, I lose my head where I'm in the middle of the pitch in the sense of I want to tell the players what to be doing. I want to be coaching in the middle of the pitch, and then I find myself in a coaching mindset naturally because I haven't got a player head switched on where I'm not pushing myself to, be the Roy Keane of training where I want
Mm.
that high level. But as a coach, I'd expect that, and that's because I don't enjoy training as playing as much as I enjoy coaching. So I know for me, I don't get that interest in playing as much as I do in coaching anymore. And it's only this season when I've become back involved in a club now where I'm coaching under 19. So I'm contemplating signing on for the reserves just to try and see
Mm.
whether I want to play for a year or two before I get a lot older in my 30s, and then I'm like, I don't even have the time to play, or I might have kids, a family, a job, etc. And then I might be like, oh, do you know what? It's no longer there to be an opportunity. So, but then in that sense, it comes to a weekend. I'm like, how much more time do I have available around everything else to commit the training, commute the games, etc. So, as coaching takes up enough time when we do all of that anyway.
And I think for me, I've definitely seen the last couple of years as I've progressed in my coaching journey as a player. I'm so easy to say something, and it's like I want to step back because it's someone else's turn to coach, but I might have a completely different opinion, and I respect that and I understand that. But then I'm constantly thinking about what would I do? How would I change this? If I was in this session now, what would I be doing, or what would I be saying? And as a player, if I'm going in now, I always love my coaching and playing to be separate. Because when I want to go in and play, that's where I want my head switched on. I want to focus. I want to work hard. I want to be the fittest I can be. But it's so easy to be like, or a player would say to you, Leigh, what would you do in this situation? And I come from a coaching point of view, and it completely contradicts of what we're trying to do as a team. It's like it gets to a point where it just doesn't work, and it's not the best for the team, because I'll be a team player and I'll work hard and I'll play the best as I can on a Sunday. But it's so hard coming from a coaching journey and a mindset that actually you want that little bit more, and you have that different opinion, and that's what's great with coaching. Everyone has their own opinion, and it's great to balance ideas off each other. But over the last couple of years, I've probably taken on in my playing role. I've probably coached a little bit on the side, or I'll do a session for you, like a help with the B license. When actually, I just need to take a step back and just let someone coach me and enjoy playing. Where managers are always easy to say, "Oh, I'll let you coach. You can take a session." When actually, I'm so easy to say yes because I love it, but I just want to come and play. And I think that's where I'm in the mindset now, where I just want to turn up, I want to play, and I want to just go home. And I've given all of I can. I've worked hard, trained hard, and actually I can go and focus on what I'm doing on a Sunday. So it's been a nice transition, but there's definitely been times where I thought I can't get out of that coaching mindset.
And it's hard in that coaching mindset because when you even take or plan a session, for example, there could be so much detail in there, and the level of detail that you're trying to coach, obviously, that is expected on you, UEFA B, and which they teach us to do. But when you're in that position where you're given that level of detail, sometimes when you're back to playing yourself, you just want to be kicking the ball around with the teammates that are around you, or scoring a goal, or getting that. Those high levels of energy out of you which you've had all day, and sometimes when you've had those levels of detail then relayed back to you, it can be so difficult to switch back off from, or sometimes so enjoyable, and it can be hard to get away from the coaching mindset and just go back into that player. And it's difficult then when other coaches say to you, would you mind taking this session, when you're there to play. So it can be quite a difficult one in that sense.
Yeah, and I think now I have signed on for the women's team that I coach with, and that's just in a worst case situation where we might be lower numbers that week. Can I get myself involved? Or right, we're getting tired legs. Is there someone else that we can get on, and just be that option? But I'm really, really mindful that I don't want to put myself in a position on the pitch. And the girls are amazing, they're great, and they'd love for me to be playing. But actually, if I go on, and this is at a level higher than I played at in the last couple of years. So if I go on and make a mistake that I'd penalise them for, or would criticise them on, how can I go and do it myself? And it's actually finding that balance where, right, if I needed, I'll go on and play. So it's been great at the end of training when we just go into an open game at the end. We've done all the work, we've worked hard, we've broke it down, we've done the technical and tactical detail. We've gone into that open game environment because we know that social side's important. And actually, I'll join in, and it's great. We can have that fun. But actually, on a Sunday, we go on and switch on, and like it's serious. And what I'm saying to you is what I want you to work on. And if I don't go and do that as a player while playing for that team, it's then going to people start asking questions why I think it's okay for me to do it, but it's not all right for them to do it. So I think it's got to be separate or in the right environment. So that's why I'm just there as a backup for now.
Which is great for you that you're there as that backup, but as you say, it's in the right environment and the right time, because I know when I took over, well, we started a new football club at grassroots level, and automatically I went from being manager and sitting on a committee to being a chairman and leading on a committee and over the entire club, its vision, its philosophy, everything that could happen right from the top. And it was so hard then when I was on the football pitch of then from being a coach and manager to then having to think with a chairman's hat on, because I had to think of the bigger picture of not just what my team was, but everything else happening in the club. And my answer sometimes had to be different to what it would be from my coaching point of view. And sometimes it did contradict what parents originally thought. But when I was in that chairman point of view, it's because I had to have the bigger picture in mind, and I had to look at it in a complete different contrast and deal with it differently as I would a coach. And it became so difficult at times for people to see the answers that I was giving, because I was a combination of coach and chairman, but sometimes the answers were from a dedicated point of view as as a chairman and how that would look throughout a club, and it becomes difficult. And how people even see you then as between player and coach can confuse them. And I know when I spoke to a lot of coaches recently and other professionals, it can be hard to be seen in these different hats separately as their own entities as such. So sometimes in your own mindset, it's difficult to weigh up what we need to do and when we need to do it. But as you say, it's the right time, right environment.
Yeah, and I think for me, so I'm assistant secretary of a grassroots football club. So their under 14s I've had since I was 16. So I've had them through the whole journey for the last 8 years. So they're like my solid team. I manage, I coach them. I've had them throughout the whole of my coaching journey. I then, at the same club, supported the under 7s and 8s on a Saturday morning on their match nights. And then I go all the way through to like open age at a different club. But it is what I would do with the under 7s and 8s is probably completely different to what I would do with the open age team. And even from the under 14s to the women's team, it might be the same session I'm delivering, but I guarantee they go back to back both sessions on a Thursday night. I guarantee if I deliver the same session, because they play a similar formation, I get different outcomes and I get a different environment and a different vibe between each session. And it's like there's only half an hour in between delivering these, but I bet it's a completely different session week in, week out. And sometimes it's a good thing because what's happened in the first session, if it's not gone to plan, you can make it right in the next session or work out that actually that works better if I do it that way. Or you can actually go from a buzz and everything's gone as well as you can. You go to the next session and they don't pick it up as well and you think, is it me? Is it you? Was it the session? Was it right for you? Surely we should pick it up. And it's just knowing that difference. And it's like I say, so if I go from assistant secretary head and running a club and what you want to do best for the club, but then you want to do what's best for your team, and then you break it down and go, actually, I want what's best for my players, you're probably going to get 3 or 4 different outcomes. And it's going from what the best feel is. But again, it's who you're dealing with, what the situation is. Actually, is that best for my players to put them in a situation like that? Actually, it's not. So as a club, we might take a decision to use a life at the weekend or choose not to put our team in that environment. So it's good understanding your players, understanding where you are as a manager, and then being able to work as a club to say, as a club, we'll now do this.
And there's some really good points there for anyone who wants to listen to this, especially coaches, as part of the Coaching Insight series. And, it's good that you have that collaboration in the way that you can speak and make that judgment and decision then collectively as a club in terms of what's best for those players, remembering it is about what's best for them because they're the ones on the pitch. And it can be so difficult to take away when it becomes down to a committee or when we're sitting on those board levels, etc., that we're all adults in a room thinking of what we think is best, but when realistically we should think as young players and think what would be best for them. And it can be a situation at times where those young people realistically are forgotten about because it's the adults in the room making those decisions.
And I think I've been around a lot of coaches and I've been on many sidelines and different environments. I've been at venues with 16 pitches playing all at once. I've been in a park pitch where it's just us on a school pitch. And I think sometimes you're looking, egos do get in the way. And I think when you go down to actually realising why you're doing it and you're doing it for the kids, and actually sometimes it's hard to break down how an adult feels and are they doing it for the kids or are they doing it because actually it's filling in for what they might miss out on as in their playing career and trying to play that through the kids. But sometimes you've just got to take that step back and think, actually, the kids are here for a reason. We talk about it in school all the time. If you don't create that positive environment now, whether it's in a grassroots environment, in a school environment, if you're trying to transition them or keep them long in the game, if you're their first opportunity and their first experience, if they don't enjoy it now, they're not going to be long term in the game. And from my under 14s, I've got 8 players that are due a long service award this year, or at least 6 this year and 2 in the next year or so. And I think that just shows when you set a good environment, you have a good team, you do it together, and it's not you as an individual and they're just playing for you. You're one team, you're one club. It shows that you'll keep the consistency, they'll enjoy it, they'll go play for the school team, they'll enjoy that environment, they'll come back to you and they're in the game a long time. You've got to be mindful that if you're their first experience, whether it is that grassroots or school environment, because if you're in a school environment and they have a negative impact or experience, actually that's going to impact them because they're not going to want to go and play outside of school. If you create a fun environment and give them their first experience, they'll want to go and continue. They'll want to go and have a new experience elsewhere, and you'll keep them in a game a long time. So it's really something to be mindful of.
And I truly love that. And, that first experience is really important capture because as I've had my team from under sixes to under 11s, and all I could ever think in the back of my mind, which was quite at the forefront at times, it was quite important to have that always there in my mindset. But even though we were getting from under sevens to 11s, so we went 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, and then the plan would be 12s and so on. Once we get past under 10s, the under 11s, we can never get those years back, and we can never go back and go, do you know what, I'm going to give you the under 10 season again, because there's so many times when I wish I could go back to under 10s myself and enjoy it again, but I can't. And for me, when I'm with my players, I knew the importance of maximising every opportunity at under 9, under 10, under 11 was so important, because we could never get that time back. And I know when they're old enough and they're like me and thinking back, do you know what did I think of junior football, did I enjoy it? I wanted them to enjoy it so much more than I did and have so many more opportunities than I had, and to give them absolutely everything, because we can never get that time back. And it's so difficult because certain coaches, as you say, do have that ego and try to live what they didn't do through those children. It's not their experiences, and if that's their experience of being shouted at or being pulled off pitches or limited game time, especially whilst they're so young and so on, it can be a difficult one, because as you say, it's that first time experience for a lot of them as well when they're entering and they have those coaches. But how many of them are retained in the game long term is quite an interesting thought. But it's those experiences and that connectivity with the players which is so important.
Yeah, and I think on that point, if I asked my 7s and 8s what they loved on a Saturday morning or what was going on in the game, they're more concerned whether they're getting Haribos at the end of the game than what's actually going on the pitch. And I love that. I guarantee I could say to one of them, are you going to get the referee sweets for the end? Who's going to sort the sweets out for the opposition? Who's going to be taking charge? And they love it. Oh, can I take some for my sister or my brother? And actually, they've really enjoyed themselves. They've had a time. The result doesn't matter. They've had a time of their life. They've played 40 minutes of football. They've ran around the pitch, having fun. Now actually they want the Haribos. And actually, they're really excited of what's going on, or at the beginning of the game, have you got the Haribos today, Lee? And the under 14s had we'd done a game in pre-season, and I made a comment that, oh, you'll get Haribos if you're the winners, and they were like, well, I remember when you used to bring us Haribos all the time, Lee. And I'm like, well, I do that for the 7s and 8s now. They're like, yeah, but we want them still. And I think once you have that environment, and it's, yeah, we work hard, and the under 14s were probably caught out early when everyone's playing like Spider-Man Tig at under 10s. I was doing my level 2 and how we can be compact on a football pitch and how we can work as a unit. And actually, their terminology as a 9-10-year-old was amazing, but I was always mindful that I didn't want to take away their experience when other teams were having probably more that flexible, like a little bit more enjoyment, where actually I had a level 2 to complete and I was on my coaching journey and they were coming with me because they were my team. But you remember they've still got the points of actually we've got the Haribos, actually can we have them, and you've got that relationship. And like with the 14s now, like we won the league last year, and actually, yeah, we worked hard and we knew what we wanted our outcome to be, and it was unpredictable at times what were going to happen. And did we ever think we was going to be in that position to win the league? Absolutely not. I never thought at the beginning of last season, but we went on a really good run of games. We got some really good results, and it was tight coming down to the last couple of games. And you're trying to say to them, we're here to enjoy ourselves, but if you work hard, you listen, and we leave everything on the pitch, you know what you can achieve at the end. But you're always mindful that you're doing it for the players. But you know at under 14s, they wanted it just as much as we did. And it's, again, I'd have been gutted if we didn't win the league after being so close, but they would have been too. But it's knowing it wasn't for me. At the end of the day, it's a game of football. On a Monday, they go to school, I go to work, and I'll see you again on a Thursday. And I think sometimes you get sucked in that actually it is just a game of football and we all go back to normal the day after.
And that's another important point, because as I manage on a Sunday, and sometimes you see other coaches lose their heads during a game and screaming at the referee. I just stand there bemused watching the other coaches at times. Like, do you know what? There's so much more, because at the end of this game, what are you realistically going to do? Go home and get on with your job tomorrow and live your life as you would. There's no VAR. There's no tribunals to go and sit. Unless it was absolutely necessary. But you're not going into elite environment tomorrow with this team. They have score and things and so on. And sometimes I get so confused as to why these coaches get so lost in it. And I know that they're expecting and want the best for their players, but at the end of the day, there is a life to be had, and there's so much more in teaching those players, in terms of, yes, there are expectations, yes, there's high standards, yes, you can push, but me screaming at a referee in an under-18s league game, is that going to help your development? Probably not. What can I do away from that that's going to help you and maximise what I'm going to do on Thursday? So instead of screaming at the referee, it's how do we address what that problem was maybe in training, or how can we play better so we're not in those situations as such to give away fouls. And some coaches don't seem to understand that, and as you said earlier, outcomes is a really important point, and not every coach thinks with an outcome mindset and has a session, or thinks, what's the outcome for this season or the outcome for this game? Is it more than just the 3 points? Is it how we coach these players, or is it just about the 3 points? And the variation of levels between coaches we come up against, it can be quite staggering at times.
And I think it's what's successful for your team, what's successful for my team might not be for the team we're playing on a Sunday morning. And for under 7s and 8s, I just want them running with the ball. I want them to be confident on the ball. I want them to be able to run with the ball, take players on. They're 6 years old. But someone else I might come across on a Saturday morning might think their success is, right, if we can make the passes and the movement, but it's understanding where my players are at. If they can run with the ball and get us from one side of the pitch to the other and create an opportunity, whether it's to score or a cross in the box or even just going forward with the ball, then for my team at that level, that's a success. It might be setting those individual targets that actually, for the women's team this year, we've gone on a real transition period, and in terms of we're the third team in the club. So in terms of player recruitment, we're quite a young team. We've got a lot of girls that have just come out of college or still in college, coming in the first experience of adult football. We've still got a mix of experienced players in there, but as a whole, we are pretty much a new team together, and I've come in new to the coaching team. So actually, we're on that journey now, and for us, this success is actually what we're working on in training is coming out in the game. And you're probably hitting that frustration period now because it's really working on a pitch, and yeah, results might not always go in our way, but a team that might have beat us 8-0 last year only beat us 1-0 the other week. For me, that's a massive success, and in less than 12 months, you've gone on a massive journey. Now, the next step for us is to get past those defeats and move to the next step. But at the minute, I've monitored the success in what our results are showing. Where was we at last year? For the under-14s this year, my success for them is actually we're in a real mixed division this year. It's quite tough. We've got some teams who are in the same division as last year. I've got some teams that are coming from the division above. If we can finish mid-table, I'll be quite happy with that, because was we challenged as much as we should have been last year? No, maybe 2 or 3 games, yes, but overall we wasn't challenged enough. So this year we're getting that challenge, but we're not going to get the success from the results straight away as we got last year, because we wasn't challenged enough to get those results. So this year, actually, can we take in, if we can finish mid-table, get the results? But again, it's that transition, it's a learning curve, it's that next step of the journey, and it's how you manage that success. And I think for me, it differs between every team I'm in, different environments, different players. What you want from one player might be completely different to another player. And I think it's knowing your environment, knowing your team, and knowing your players and what you're capable of.
And they're all really important points, and that sounds so similar to where the situation that I currently found myself in this year. So, unfortunately, I had to give up my junior team, who I have from 6s to under 11s, so I could try and progress to be in 19s and seniors football, so then I can hopefully try and get on the UEFA licence, and try and progress like yourself in that sense. So, in that sense, I come to an under-19s team that existed with the last 2 years. They've all been together. They won the league and they won the League Cup last year. They were undefeated for the entire season in both competitions. And a lot of those players were academy players for a long time. And I did coach a lot of them at a good level in the academy. But I found myself taking over this under-19s team. Some of them were too old to play again. The coach had just left. The league was restructured, so it's a different league entirely this year. There's a couple of academy teams which are now in this league. And we brought up a load of young 16s which now complement what this 19s team is. We've gone from an under-18s to an under-19s. I formed a new management team. So there's been a lot already which made a lot of change for the existing players who already played adults football and played up a year already and played in seniors with thirds, seconds and so on. But a lot of these 16s who are coming through are quite new, quite raw, who have never experienced this environment as such. And it's how we took from the way the 19s played last year to the way the 16s played to how we want to play, gelling all that together. And what are our outcomes this year? Well, it's not going to be winning the league and League Cup like the original 19s done last year, because it's a complete different contrast and environment as well as landscape that is in front of us, and it's not the entire same. And these 19s took a long time to adjust to and understand that, and it was quite a difficult and quite slow start to our pre-season because of the combination of factors around that. But now we're at a real strong point where we're now going into November. We played yesterday, we drew now quite strong, happy to get the point. We stopped the opposition from scoring. It was the first time we've kept a clean sheet in the season. And we're building on the points that we had. So realistically, we'd be on 7 points. Unfortunately, we've had 3 deducted because of a tough start of the season. But in realistic terms, we've won 2 games, we've drawn 1. We held the league leaders who are 3 points clear with 3 games in hand, who beat a teammate now yesterday. We lost only 1-0 the week before to them, and we've done the best against them. We lost 6-5 the other week. So for me, there's a lot of successful outcomes in losing that 1-0 and losing 6-5 and drawing 0-0 yesterday and building on where we are, rather than just beating every team we played so far in the 6 league games we had 5-0 and us sitting top of the table with nothing to do realistically.
And I think that's where you go from challenging players, and it goes back, was it challenging enough last year for the under-14s team? No, it wasn't. But they loved it. They loved going out playing. They loved going out playing with the freedom. And this year it's like, oh, I don't have that much time on the ball. Well, actually, this is the best option for us to go. Or actually, they're pressing quite high. They're quite hard to break down. Well, this is what we need to look at. And we talk about like splitting and playing through and playing beyond and trying to break down their lines at times. And it's that transition period for them. And you get to a point where you get into close games and actually you're gutted because you didn't get the 3 points and you were so close and you held on to them, or there was a 1-0 difference. And it's making sure your players understand that that's actually really good. That's actually quite successful. I'm actually quite pleased with that. I understand why you're frustrated, 100%, because you want the 3 points. You want to win. It's competitive. You're here to play. But I also understand that actually we're going through a transition period. And if that takes a full season, then that takes a full season. And with the women's team, it's making sure they're on board that actually this might take half season. It might take a full season to be where we want to be. And then we'll restart and go again. But you've got to stick together. Like with the under-14s, they're such a close team. We do a lot together. We've literally come through the whole journey from under-7s to 14s. We pretty much, 50% of the team have been there the whole time. So actually, they get it, and they get when I'm saying it might take us 12 months to where we want to be, because we've already experienced that in our younger years, where actually the football isn't coming along, and actually what was our success, and then you do get over the hurdle, and then you have a really good run, and then you hit another barrier, and actually that's football, and things aren't always plain sailing. And I think, look at the leagues, whether it's WSL or the Premier League, it's not always plain sailing, and it's understanding you've got to regrow, you've got to stick together and go through that transition, and then you'll come out the other side eventually.
There's so many key notes and points that I'm taking from you as you're speaking. I'm literally writing them down as I'm going. But you say a good point there: regrow and retransition. And a prime example of that is Liverpool, because they are losing. They're not top of the table. They're not sat in a strong position as they were a season or two ago. They're not dominating games, but it's that regrow where how can they even approach that from an elite level with elite players? Yes, okay, they could go and splash 100 million, but in that sense, is from a coaching perspective, is it the model that needs to change? Is it how the style of play needs to adapt? How, and there's so many questions around that, which makes coaching so interesting. And we've seen that between the 14s and 19s, as we say, and how we've been able to see that in a transition period. So whether we see Liverpool transition now for a next season in terms of their style of play and the type of players that they bring in will be quite interesting. And we see that with Chelsea now. How will Graham Potter transition from being a coach playing with an underachieving squad to overachieving on a limited budget to having quite a big budget available to him right now, which is quite interesting to see how he grows as a coach now. And it's that landscape and that transition which is really important, and those challenges for players. And for example, with the 19s, it's as you said, your 14s were quite tight. These 19s weren't to start off with. You could see quite clearly the groups had last year's 19s and the 16s, and these 19s were going, well, we walked the league last year. You should be beating these teams. Well, the team's not the same. Some of these players don't have the quality that you're used to playing at the academy levels that you have, and now these 19s are starting to see the integration with these 16s. They're starting to come together. They're starting to spur them on, and they're starting to realise, what, these players need more of our support, but what, they're also fighting as well, and it's bringing them closer, and they're going, it is a different league. So it has taken that time, but for young people and for players in those environments, they need to regrow their mindsets as well, which it's not just about the regrowth of a model or regrowth of a coach, it's the regrowth of mindsets in everyone that's involved in that holistic environment.
Definitely, and I think we talk about the players and the players' needs and their understanding and that social and emotional side of the game, as well as that tactical and technical side of it and the physical side of it, and it does all nicely link in together, but it's understanding that there's more than what happens on a football pitch. And I think coming from a coaching mindset, and I've been coaching now 8 years, and I started at 16 and now 23, and everyone looks at you and think, oh, you're still quite young. And I probably achieved a lot in a short space of time, and although 8 years is a long time, I am still young. I have done my B licence this year. I am looking to push on, and that was the main reason why I took on the women's team this year, because I've been through such a journey. I understand the transition. So I did the 7s and 8s with another coach on a Saturday morning at the club. We commit to having the 7s and 8s because it allows parents to watch and see how we do it with a lot of experience. And then at under 9s, we pass them on to one of the parents who might take the team on further. And then the under 14s, I've had them through that whole journey so far. So actually, I've come on my journey with them, and we've probably hit barriers together. We've probably overcome barriers together. And then now using the experience and the knowledge that I've had from the B licence to take that into an open age environment where it is completely different. You're having different types of conversation. It's been a massive learning curve for me, and wondering what my successes are as an individual and as a coach, and away from a team environment, like what are my barriers, what transition have I had to go through? Because if I look at the beginning of this season, pre-season, I'm so confident with the 14s. We talk about again, is it too tactical, technical at that age? Yeah, it's probably a bit of both. It's finding that balance that works for them. But actually, I went into an open age environment, and the first couple of weeks, I did not want to open my mouth. I knew I had the knowledge. I knew I could do it, but adult players answer you back or will question you. And if you cannot answer a question of an adult player, that at under 14s, you can tell them, because you know what, you kind of feel like, well, I know what I'm doing. I'm telling them how it is. They know me inside and out. The younger ones on a Saturday morning, you get you know what type of questions are coming, or can you tie my shoelace, or why are you asking me to do that? They're more interested what's going on. And then you go into an adult environment and they're like, oh, why are you asking me to do that? Or I've told you that wasn't the right pass option. Well, why I thought it were. Or I've told them to do that and they disagree. And you think, at first I did not want to talk to them. I did not want to step on that pitch. I did not want to go and coach an individual player. I did not want to stop and restart a session, I kind of just stepped back, and it kind of got until I was comfortable, and the transition probably came. We were low on numbers one pre-season session, and I was like, come on, let's get football tennis out. Let's have a bit of a team bonding session. And I got really involved with the players that game, and I thought, you know what, actually, you got that sense of being accepted. Although I knew I was part of the team and I was accepted, and I knew I could do it, but they hadn't seen the best of me because I wasn't that all confident. And then we had that transition. So I gone through that transition period, and now I'm getting that success, and I'm not bothered to say anything. And I coach the standard I know I can coach to, and the players are getting the benefit from that. But that I was really quiet, or they didn't probably know that I was going through a different transition. All they knew was, here's Leigh, she's a B licence, she's going to come and help support the team. She's been in the game. You put a B licence tag on it and someone thinks, oh my God, you're amazing. And I'm thinking, I've only just passed my B licence and I'm absolutely petrified to talk to players that are the same age to me. Where actually now, I'm comfortable in myself and I know I can say, I know that, but it probably took about 6 weeks for me to properly settle in that environment.
And it can be difficult, as you say, to even coach players that are the same age as you. And even though I'm with 19s and I'm 26, and they're 16 and up to 19, I would still say I'm in a bracket where there's only a 10-year age difference between being 16 and 26, and they're still quite young, and I would still class myself as a young person right up until I'm 30, and then I'm over the 30 barrier. But even in that sense, when you are communicating with them and they're they're going through stages such as getting jobs and things like that, you can relate to them quite well because you're not so far off their age that you can remember doing it, and you're quite close in terms of how they started their studies and what you've done and where you might currently be at, and you might have players who are 18 going to uni, and you might be in uni, and you can share those thoughts and experiences, which is quite good. But even when you're working with individuals your own age, it can be quite difficult to sort of gauge and go in and tell someone exactly the same age, or someone older than you, if you're coaching, what you expect or what you want from that coaching session, which can be a difficult one to sort of gauge.
And I think sometimes you're coaching players that have been in the game far longer than you have, so they're not set in their ways. They're always open to what you want to say to them, and it's always quite adaptable. But they've had it one way, or they've played a certain way the whole of their playing career, and now you're saying, actually, I want you to do this, and it's breaking down and overcoming of what you can achieve together. And I think, like, for me, you talk about players being able to relate to you. So the league my women's team are playing in now, I played in when I was 17, 18. It's a tough league. You sink or you swim. And I knew that as a player. And I knew as a player it was probably out of my depth at times. So in the end, once I finished in that league, there was a lot of travelling. There's a lot of travelling to Penrith, Workington. It's a long journey on a Sunday. I couldn't do that with the 14s who were under 10s or 11s at the time. I couldn't keep committing that journey, so I made a decision to leave, so I could focus on coaching, because I couldn't be in two places, but I could still play if I was local to home. And these 16-year-olds that are coming in and in pre-season, I'm saying to parents and players, it's a big step, it's a lot more physical. You've got a lot of players here that are probably twice your age, that have been playing in this game as long as you've been alive. It's going to challenge you physically and mentally. You will sink or swim. And they're like, no, I won't, I'm all right. And I'm like, no, trust me. You'll either thrive as a player, or you'll hit barriers and you'll feel like you're out of your depth, and you'll look to go back down to more of a tier 7 level. But that was from my experience personally as a player. I knew the demands that came with it, and it's being able to relate to players. If things are getting tough, think about, is it because I'm playing against more experienced players? I might not have that every week. Is it because they're more physical than I am? And it's understanding that I've been in their position. You'll find the balance eventually. You'll either settle, and it's like now I have in the 14s, I have a girl playing within the rest, 99% of the team are boys, and the girls come in, but for her, it's going to make her technically and physically better and stronger. And actually, it's saying to the women's players, you playing against these stronger ability players that are going to be more physical is only going to help and grow your game. But it's that mindset and making sure they understand that you can relate, you do understand. You're not saying it because you find it funny, you're saying it because you've got the knowledge and the experience and you are there to help them.
Absolutely, and as you say, it's a really important point there to for that young girl to train in that environment with the boys, and there's so much that she can learn. I remember when I had an under 9s, under 10 squad, we did have one girl in that team, and she had such sheer quality. She was unbelievable, and she is one of my all-time favourite players that I've ever had the fortune of coaching, because she was just so focused, dedicated, she was hard-working, and she had so much on her technical side. And I remember when I told the boys, all right, we got a girl joining, and they laughed at it at a point, but I said, well, just watch. And she easily became one of their own favourite players, and she walked down that pitch and they respected her so much because she brought a different style and different expectation in the team, because she had so much quality. She could win the game on her own. So whether you started her or brought her off the bench, she had a major impact, and they knew that. And when she wasn't there because Dad was away playing himself, and they really missed her, and they couldn't wait for her to be back. And I know when she left, as we transitioned as a team to a different club, and she decided to go and play with girls football to be with her friends after quite a few years of playing boys football, which I completely understood. The boys really, really missed her, and they still do. And 2-3 years on, they're still pining for her to come back. And she really made an impact on them. And it's about those challenges on players. And as much as she's with her friends now and she's enjoying it, which I'm really glad of for that social side, she's scoring 5 to 10 goals weekly in a girls' league. Not to right off the girls' league, but the quality isn't there in terms of what she had experienced because of the technical abilities. And realistically, how much impact is she getting out of that in terms of scoring 5 goals every week against the team, rather than getting 2 goals and an assist, being challenged, being pushed around a little bit more because it's physical in naturally in the boys and girls mixed league rather than a girls league at times. Is a hard one to sort of look at from her point of view of enjoying it to then as a coach. And I know that we set up a girls team recently in school this week, and there's 2 players who in September, and they played last week, and there's 2 girls in there who play a really good standard of football, and they play over in the JPL in Bristol, and I was reffing the game and I didn't give the fouls against them because I knew it was quite a good tackle from what I saw and put on it, but the girls around them have just started, and these 2 players are getting really frustrated because they played at a high level and these girls are just starting. So it's difficult then because the levels are like that, and the PE teacher's trying to get that balance of what's right and wrong between them. But for me as an academy coach, looking at the 2 different contrasts, there is that physicality change which the other girls who are new into it weren't expecting.
And I think, and it's as we look at players transitioning to another environment, it comes to a point they might be better elsewhere in their physical and technical and tactical ability, but actually, if their enjoyment is elsewhere, then that's the right move for them. And I also flip it on its head there, where I talk about, like, I've had 2 players now, in one that started off, so when you have them at 7s and 8s, they come in, we have a partnership with a local coaching company, so they'll help feed our under 7s in, and then you kind of see, actually, do you know what, they've got something about them. And we've had 2 players now move on to professional clubs, those that are still in contract, and you look at, actually, I could put them anywhere on the pitch and my players wouldn't touch the ball and they would score goals and they would do everything. But actually, was that player getting any benefit? No, because they became a 1-person team. Was any of the other players around getting anything? No, and we wasn't really a team. It took until that player then transitioned into an academy environment and we had to gel as a team and move into under 9s. And that was that transition where actually we've got to work as a team now. You've got to work together. You've got to pass the ball. You've got to move the ball. You've got to be confident. And actually, the best option, had that player not gone into an academy environment and is still there at under 14s now, we'd have probably had to have that conversation to say, you need to go elsewhere, because for us, you're not getting any benefit and no one else is getting any benefit for it. And then we had a similar situation a player that's now gone into academy at Liverpool, has been there since under sevens, always been watched. Again, had he not gone to Liverpool, would have had to have those conversations to say to better your footballing ability. Yes, it's so good playing with your friends, but if football's the route, and you can't stop someone at the end of the day, if they want to stick playing with their friends, you can only advise what you think's best for them and their footballing ability. But you've got to understand there's a child and there's a person in there away from being a footballer, and if their best environment is playing with their friends, then you've got to do that. And you look from a school point of view. I've managed a lot of school teams or picked the school teams in the last couple of years, and it's finding those balance. Actually, do you know what? I could put this team out, and it'd be a really strong team, and I know they work together. And I had a situation last year where I'd sent a really strong team out, and actually, when I sent a team that was a mixed ability group, the one that had the more success and the more enjoyment was the one that was the mixed group, because the others took it a little bit too seriously. And actually now, in that school environment, and think they're representing the school, you want them to enjoy it, because some of those might not have the experience to play football outside of school. And coming from like a football background, they're always like, come on Leigh, can we play football, because you like football. So we're actually, football in school is my worst nightmare. As an extracurricular, love it. As a lunchtime club, love it. Tournaments, love it. Do not ask me to even touch a football in a PE lesson, because you're fighting against that ability level and there's too much difference. We're actually at a lunchtime club or an after school club, you can kind of match the teams up. You haven't got enough time to do that with 30 kids. And then you're looking at, actually, if you're doing a lot of ball work and everyone's got a ball at the feet, does the school even have 30 balls? Probably not. I was quite fortunate that I was in charge of my PE budget and what we ordered, so I always made sure there was enough for everyone, no matter whether it was netball, basketball, or whether we needed the footballs, whatever equipment I needed for that lesson, all made sure. And now it transitioned to not being a direct sport, that actually we could use a range of equipment and there was enough. But then you're thinking, if I are doing a little bit of ball work, well, and they're doing a little bit of dribbling, if I've not got 30 balls, I'm then dealing with the ones that have never touched a ball before. Those that play at a high level, some that are already playing a year up because they're that good, they're now booting balls across my lesson because they're not challenged enough. It just becomes such a messy environment. So, as much as I love football, being in a school, teaching football, extracurricular, yeah, lunchtime club, yeah, tournaments, yeah, but in a PE lesson, absolutely not.
See, I completely agree with that, and I love tournaments myself. But as extracurricular, I've done football now in 3 different schools as a teacher. And the first school that I remember doing it in, I remember hating every moment of it, because the PE teacher just wanted me to coach the session so he could go off and do what he wanted to do. But then come to the games, he just wanted to do it all and take them through the glory. So I was like, and I just remember it was just shocking. The second one wasn't too bad, and but the school was quite rugby orientated and there wasn't much focus on football, but I tried my best. And the third one where I'm currently in, I remember starting off with the skills team. It was really exciting, and I'm so glad to have helped the team and to be involved. And the girls have done really well since we started in their 3 games. They're undefeated. But in that sense, I remember delivering the first session, and it was like 4 footballs, and 2 of them were pancakes, and then there was no cones, and like we had to share goals, or there weren't goals. And I get adapting, I get changing sessions, I get having to put poles up. I can do it, no problems. But when it's so consistent, it is so frustrating. And when you're coaches like ourselves, and we've done B licenses, and we've coached the senior teams, or we coached under 14s, and we've been in those environments where we've been linked with academies, we got those players having balls, having our own budgets, having the cones, everything stacked up on the side where we can just walk over, grab whatever we need during a session and just get it out, is exactly where we're at. And sometimes when you're going into those sessions in a school, and you've got the bare minimum because they've lost so many or whatever, I just hate extracurricular football in school from a coaching standard, because I'm like, I can't cope with this level of equipment that you keep giving me. I hate it.
And I think for me, I've always kept my coaching and work separate. It's always been that way since I took over, because when I go and coach, I want to forget about the day. if my day's not gone to plan, I want to go and coach and give my all. I've had opportunities to go and coach within where I work and have an opportunity to have that paid environment to go and coach. And I'm like, yeah, that's a great opportunity and I would love to do it. But it doesn't fit inside what I'm currently doing. I will hands down take my under 14s through to 16s because we don't do past youth football. So I know I'll take them on the full youth football journey. And I love that voluntary side. And so many people have said, well, Leigh, you're a B licence now. Why aren't you going into a paid environment? Why aren't you doing this? I love my voluntary stuff. I love being able to do what I do. But I also love teaching, and coming away from that school delivery after 3.5 years has been quite tough. And because I wasn't just a football coach, I did everything. I was the PE teacher. I was what they saw for everything. And whether it was we had the balls out doing striking and fielding or invasion games, and it was that transition where yes, I'm a football coach, but I'm also qualified. At the time, I wasn't quite the B licence or finished it, so I was still level 2. I might be a level 2 football coach, but I'm also level 2 in multi skills and invasion games. And actually, there's a difference, but on paper, they're both level 2s, and I was as qualified in the same in each one. And it was great because everyone's like, well, you're just coaching a PE lesson. I said, it's so different. I love teaching. I love breaking it down. I love giving that enjoyment. And those that want that technical and tactical and the extra detail come into that coaching environment. And it was great because I know the kids that I was teaching in the school, I'm not going to bump into them on a football pitch on a Saturday or a Sunday because it's at the opposite side of the county. So it was great. My football was me, and that was my football, and I enjoyed it. But when I went into a school environment, I thrived and I loved it just as much. But it were completely two different things.
And it's great that you say that, and you enjoy the grassroots more than it would be for getting paid for it and knowing exactly where that enjoyment lies. So I remember being an academy coach, and I haven't been for a year and a half now, but I stopped coaching because I lost the enjoyment of what I had for coaching. I love the academy environment in terms of high standards, trying to progress players, and you're working with a real core group of players who've been given contracts, and there's a great amount of quality that's in there. You get the work in that environment. But after so long, it can really take its toll on you because the fun and the enjoyment gets stripped back so much because it's just detail, high standards. And sometimes at grassroots, you can have that, but there's a valve you can just release and you go and have fun with your team. You go and have a fun day, or you have a laugh after the game, or you're connected more than just being an academy coach with parents who are either paying or players on contract who are expecting a lot from you. But with the grassroots, you're essentially become quite close as a family, as we've always called ourselves, where we're always doing things so much more than just happens on the football pitch. And the players are going out together and they're linking up. And it's not to say that they don't do that in academy, but you tend to see it more at grassroots, and everyone's there for more of a common cause at a grassroots team. Yes, you might find the parents and the players who might want to go and play Premiership football, and those who might start negotiating deals with other teams because they want to win the league, etc. But naturally, when you look at it, the core of it usually is those who want to be there for the same purposes. And grassroots can be so much more enjoyable than academy. And I know when I was in academy, I really struggled at times with that balance of some days I'd enjoy grassroots more, some days I would enjoy academy more, for different reasons. But on a holistic level, that's why I stopped coaching academy, because it stripped back a lot of an enjoyment which I was originally having.
I think in that environment, you kind of lose a little bit of like the flexibility. And yes, at a grassroots level, we have a development plan. We know what we want to do. We know what we want to achieve. We know what formations we want to play. We have that club identity. You know who we are when you go and play against us. We probably play different formations that traditionally you'll come across. But in terms of like, and I think eventually I'd love to go into that academy environment and really push myself. But for now, I adore the flexibility that I have. I know some weeks, if I want to just put them in a game, that's fine. If we've not got a game at the weekend, or I know there's a big gap, or if I know, actually, it's great. So on Thursday, I wasn't there, but the women's team had technical difficulties with the lights. So actually, they went playing ping pong and on the trampolines at the sports centre that we train at. Do you know what? That was a great team bonding. I don't think I've ever laughed at a group chat so much coming away. And it is, you talk about you're more of a family, you're a team. It's not me against you. It's not the coaching team against the players. It's we're together, we're in this together, and it is that journey. And I love having that flexibility. And like pre-season, sometimes if I want to go and do football, tennis, that's fine. The rounders pitch is set out. If I want a week doing and just a bit more of a relaxed week, because we know sometimes pre-season you get stuck in. There's a lot of fitness. There's a lot of testing. You're trying to compete and prepare and get yourself ready for the season. But actually, I bet you that football rounders or football tennis brings your team together more than running and doing the bleep test. And it's finding that, yes, there's a time and a place, but there's a time and a place to be flexible and understand the enjoyment. And as a coach, sometimes you need that little bit of a break. You've worked on a lot, you've had your training program, you trained, you pushed, you pressed, and you've got everything out. And sometimes for your own good, you just need to take a step back and enjoy it. You've got to enjoy the ride. It's a journey, and I think that's one of the most important things I've learnt this year, that I've got 5 teams that I'm involved with, and if I don't enjoy it, it's not going to impact one team, it'll impact all 5, and it wouldn't be walking away from one. And you've got to understand it's a journey, it's a long-term process. It isn't just a season at a time. You've got to understand that you're here for the long run, and unfortunately some will realise that's not for them, and there's a lot more work than just turning up and doing a season. And you've got to be committed, and you've got to take them on that journey and be that family and be that team.
Absolutely, and within all of that is one key point, which isn't exactly said there, but is don't forget who you are necessarily, because it is about that fun, that enjoyment, and doing exactly what you said. If you want to do those rounders, let's do the rounders or football rounders. And I know I lost myself a little bit in academy football because the expectations were there, the environment that had the foundations that were laid. I remember the head of coaching coming across going, you don't have to always do the dynamic warm-up and have to get them on the cones. And I remember going to myself, I don't have to do it just because it's academy. I could go and do, bulldogs, or I can go and do netball as a warm-up, or we can go and do, stuck in the mud or foxes and tails. Just because in an academy and they're under 10s doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to enjoy these games as much. And they need to remember that they're kids as well, and they need to have that enjoyment, and whether I can do it. So I remember I lost myself for a little period, and I had to really reevaluate what I was doing at that time, because I had become so focused on being this academy coach where I was in that environment. Sometimes it was detrimental to me because it took away from what I'd done naturally with my grassroots team, and it was that balance which I had to then refine and reintegrate into from what I was doing at grassroots into academy then.
And I think so many people said to me as soon as I finished the UAFB, are you going into academy football now? Like, is that your next step? And I'm like, no, I've still got my teams. The under 7s and 8s on a Saturday morning, I love it. It makes my day. If you've not had the greatest week, and sometimes on a Friday night, you think, why do I do it? Why do I commit every year to doing Saturday mornings? Do I get anything out of it in terms of my journey as a coach and my next steps? No, because you don't touch your B licence or anywhere near that stuff at under 7s and 8s. But it makes my day, and I love just stripping it back. And those kids crack me up. Again, they go back to like the Haribos. They're more bothered about that. They want to know who your favourite player is, and when you tell them you don't know who one of the men's player is they're talking about, they look at you like you live under a rock. And I come away on a Saturday morning and I think, do you know what, that was tough. That were 3 back-to-back games. I go from one pitch to another. I got all 3 teams in. But when you reflect on it, I bet I've taken something from each game. And I absolutely adore it. But again, then I go on to the 14s and the women's team, and I just thrive, and I love it, and I enjoy it probably as much as them at times, if not that little bit more.
I know it's great that you say about taking something away from all of that, and that you enjoy it and that you love it. And they're all really important things which every coach should sort of look to take something away or reflect on it, as well as having that love throughout all of it, no matter what. And I know that we were talking about your time, talking about how we were going to look at this interview and talking about your other experiences. And we've gone for an hour and 6 minutes. We haven't even scraped the surface on what we were originally going to talk about. And that's just because we've naturally fallen into this conversation in a coaching world. And I had a list of questions prepared and a structure as I do. And I haven't even got onto those questions either. And it's been great that, I've seen this as essentially a CPD session, because naturally I've wrote things down. I've then thought, oh, do you know what? That's a great point. Or I've taken things away. And it's just been that general connection between coaches where we've been talking about all these important things and factors. And I've really enjoyed and taken so much away from this. But it's, I don't want to keep you all night because, it's quite late, 7:10 on a Monday. You've been working all day. And I'm conscious of the fact that the commitments around it and everything, and as you say, you've been coaching on the weekend, but if you'd like to, I'd really love to get you on more than this one time, because I feel that
definitely.
you offer so much more, and you can just tell with just the connection and the everything that we spoke about, how much more there is to even get through. But I know I've really enjoyed it, and
It's been
I'd
good.
love to get you on. So yeah.
I think sometimes coaches think you're against each other, and actually, we all go through the same courses, we all go through a similar journey. We actually use each other, and sometimes you don't have time to talk to someone else on a Saturday or a Sunday about their coaching experiences, and sometimes you just need to strip it back and talk. But I know I'll be definitely up to do it again.
Amazing, yeah. So we'll definitely get that sorted, and whenever time fits on your schedule, that would be great. But I'm really thankful for you to come in on tonight. I hope you
Yeah.
have a restful evening at some point. But I'll definitely drop you a message, and we'll look to go again.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thank you very much. See you later.
Right, see you later.
Bye.